And we are live once again. Welcome back to another episode of the Manny Wolfe Show. Today, my guest is ZOE UPSON, who is going to be sharing with us the importance of creativity for kids. Now, my guess is that this seems like it's an obvious thing. I don't think anybody doesn't think that kids need creativity, but we're going to go a little deeper than that. And hopefully, just maybe, we're going to get a little polarizing, controversial, antagonistic about some of the ways that maybe kids aren't getting as much access to creativity as they need. I don't know, though, so I'm going to leave it to you, ZOE. ZOE, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much. So tell me a little bit about who you are, what you do, and why we're talking about kids and creativity today.
Right. Okay. So I'm ZOE. I'm based over here in the UK. And I have been working with children for the last couple of years in relation to creativity, because certainly here, and I'm sure that it's the same in the world, so many other pressures have been taking over, and the education systems, which I know is very close to your heart, over here certainly has been cutting art budgets and music budgets, and now you can't get free music lessons in a lot of schools. Parents are having to fund all of that for children, and you know, not everybody can, frankly, and
of course.
Not just is it that not everybody can, but also some people don't really understand the importance of that. And I'm not saying that music is the be or end all, but certainly it's one of the creative arts that is just so vital for expression and loads of things.
Well, I think we can safely say that, and we're sort of, how do I put this? We're not painting with a broad brush, but we're using broad sort of rationales here.
Yes.
But we can say that if things like painting and music and math and debate and you know, if those things were valuable and considered worthwhile for you know, the Greeks and then the Romans after the Greeks, right? Those were considered to be great societies. Now, somebody's going to take a pot shot and say they were built off the backs of you know, oppression and stuff like that. I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about what a people who created the ability to pursue what they thought was the most important.
Yeah.
And so I would agree with you, of course, that music and these other creative pursuits are very important. And I think it's interesting. I've never heard a parent or somebody at sort of ground level argue that creative pursuits were not important. I only seem to hear it at the level of policy and decision making.
Yeah, and policy and decision making, definitely. But there's also a lot of people. I mean, let me tell you a very brief story about how Creative Owl really started, which was I was at an event with a friend of mine, which was a community event. And at the community event, there was a stall there with a musician who had a whole array of wind instruments. And she did tuition for those wind instruments. And this little boy went up to this instrument, and he'd never played an instrument in his life before. My friend was a music teacher, so we took a particular interest in this. He went up there and he literally blew this horn or trumpet, it was one or the other. Keynote perfect, first time he'd ever done it. And my friend just came running over and said, "You've got to come over and have a look at this. This is incredible." And I went over, and this little boy who'd never had any experience just blew this trumpet, and the teacher was astounded. And he spent pretty much the whole day, bearing in mind there were loads of games going on and he could play with his friends. He spent pretty much all day at this stand learning how to play all of these various different instruments and having a go. And my friend collared his mum. I went up to his mum later on in the day and said, "You know, he's loving this. he's a natural. This is what he needs. And this little boy is a little bit troubled anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And he's had a lot of grief and trauma in his life. And he needs an outlet other than what he usually goes to. And my friend sort of, come on, you know, she'll teach him, you know, come on, let's do this. And his mum went, no, can't afford it, not interested.
Right.
And we were like, oh. And that rang home to me, the fact that, you know, that these things that we think are perfectly needed and should be stimulated, a lot of parents either don't know about, to the degree that they don't understand all of the benefits of creative arts and the creativity and inspirational thought and all the rest of it, but also they may not have had a background where it was big in their lives either. And I think we take for granted the fact that everybody gets exposed to this. I didn't as a kid. My mum and dad were not interested in creativity at all. They were interested in writing. They weren't interested in playing music or drawing or even playing games with me as a child.
Right.
Luckily, luckily for me, I got out of that. But you know, but I only found my way back to it a couple of years ago myself. So you know, that's a bit of my story, and certainly why I became so passionate about actually highlighting this in a big way now and trying to get it back into every child's life.
I think I may have slightly misspoken before. There are parents who don't know the value, or who perhaps what I what I felt like I experienced when you shared how the mother reacted was almost like she was perhaps in a situation where she knew she couldn't pursue allowing her child to study an instrument. And so she shut it down out of perhaps embarrassment. I don't know if that's what I pulled out of that one moment.
Probably, yeah.
And things like that happen. And if I'm being honest, my grandfather hated the fact that my father was a musician.
Right.
Right. So it's not that it doesn't happen. I guess it's that it's important. How can we get to the heart of this? Like, I feel it's important that we don't legislate against creative pursuits. But I mean, yeah, I don't know. So then you and I agree that children need creative pursuits.
Definitely. And that people should have the opportunity to be able to do that.
Yeah. We make the assumption that we have a pretty good sort of body politic behind us. There's a good number of people who would agree with us on that, right?
Loads.
Of course. So maybe it's not really worth dissecting, you know, the who does and who doesn't agree, except at the point where we know that decision makers are sort of moving away from it more and more.
Yeah.
Why are they doing that?
I wish I knew the absolute answer to that, to be honest with you. I think that certainly here, I think we've got a lot more exam-based in our education system. We've got a lot more assessment-based. And the learning that I'm experiencing in the schools that I've been in, certainly, are you sit there, and I'm talking primary school children. So I'm talking children between 4 and 11 who have to learn at sort of class year 1, which is 5 years old, to sit there and be taught. They're literally expected to sit there for an hour or so at a time and be talked to and do a task. And you have X amount of time to do a task, and then you move on as a class. They're not able to be inspired, to be able to touch on their talents necessarily. One of my teacher friends, for example, they were learning calculations. They were learning, over here we have centimeters and meters. You're still in feet and inches, aren't you? But
let's hold on a second. Let's clarify that. Like the rest of the common sense rational world, you work in multiples of 10 where
Yes.
we work on this fantasy sort of
I know.
arbitrary system of different units of measure. Is that what you're trying to say to me?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're
All
using
right.
10 blocks.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier.
Base 10. Go
So
ahead.
she basically took a lesson outside, which is completely a bit strange over here to do that. She
Mhm.
took her classroom outside and
Yeah.
she got tape measures. And she went, if you're trying to add these tape measures up, or you're trying to convert from centimeters into meters or meters into centimeters, do it on the tape measures. And she had these great big huge line tapes out across the playground in groups with the children, where she was actually showing the children on a tape measure the maths.
Yeah.
Practical based fun maths, rather than sat there just doing what would easily be just, I call it calculations. It's just basic maths.
Yeah.
But she made it fun, and moreover she actually proved the fact that that's what you use it for. That's why you would need that in the real world.
Right.
Beautiful, but it's just simple things like that that make a difference. And if that's just a basic lesson planning before we get to the fact that with budget cuts over here, loads of music teachers are being taken out of schools.
Yeah.
There was a council just before lockdown that had announced that they were cutting all music funding in their council area, which was just sad.
So for people in the United States, a council area would be roughly the equivalent of a school district.
Yes.
And I know that, and I know obviously you know that. I just wanted to make sure that my U.S. audience understood what we're talking about. So do you think maybe that the reduction in creative outlet opportunities and exploration opportunities in schools has an inverse relationship to the budget constraints and the standards and outcomes kind of driven way of teaching?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that of course comes from if it's like the US, it would be an overly bureaucratic system, right?
Yeah, I think they have lost sight of what is really important from the basic level of problem solving. I did a maths challenge with my daughter yesterday, which was basically problem solving. And, you do it in curriculum, but is there a level where you sit there and you have an item? And I do forest school at our school. And we sit there some days and say, what could this stick be?
Yeah.
And the children, as soon as they're asked that question, some of them will be very, very rigid. It's a stick.
Mm-hmm.
And other children would be like, oh, it could be a wand, or it could be something else, and suddenly their imagination just snowballs, and that's fantastic. If we put that into a work environment when they get older, and they can latch onto that and sit there and go, oh, you know what, that's what I've been asked to do, but actually, do I have to do it that way? Is there not a better, easier way to be able to do that that's more effective? Or are we assuming that all of these children that think that a stick could also be a wand can only really go into marketing?
Or wizarding.
Or wizarding. Yeah, why not? Let's have a whole load of Harry Potters.
Gosh. First of all, my friend, my student, and my partner, Jackie Gold, is over here jumping up and down at this conversation. Jackie is delighted to hear us talking about this. And so, Jackie, you're going to want to go connect with Zoe UPSON. I mean, God, if I'm being a good interviewer, I'm supposed to play devil's advocate and I'm supposed to give the other side of it, but I just am baffled by the process that we blithely expect our children to go through, where it's sit down, behave, conform until you have, sort of like only I couldn't guess what percentage of creativity gets through at the, say, 12th grade or end of college. And then you've got to go into jobs that more and more require you to be creative.
Yes.
Why would we do that?
I don't know. I just think we've lost something. And maybe it's because all those people that were decision makers and policy makers at the moment weren't creatively inspired when they were young.
I mean,
have we actually, is it a generational thing? Have we lost a generation somehow here in the middle who weren't, as I said, I didn't get it when I was a child. So, I remember being in an art class and I could draw if I could copy. Yeah. So I could draw anything as long as I could copy it. I couldn't inspirationally draw something at that point.
Yeah.
So I could draw anything. And my art teacher came along the one day and said, "You're not doing what I told you to do. I told you to color that with paint." And I was like, "But if I color it with paint, I'm going to wreck it. Can't I use a crayon or, a pencil or something?" "No, it is a painting lesson. You will paint it."
Oh, God, yeah.
And I was like, "But I'm going to destroy it." And a little bit of me, I think, flaked away at that point going, "But I'm going to destroy something that I actually really love. What are you doing?" And she was, "Nope, you will paint." And I could just, that memory just comes back to me all the time whenever I think about it, of that one teacher who did that. And, okay, it was a painting lesson, but come on.
Yeah, right. And I know.
Come on.
I'm afraid I'm not going to be a very good interviewer for this conversation, because I'm reminded of a story that Sir Ken Robinson told about a classroom of, I think, 8-year-olds. And they said, just draw whatever you want. And one little girl's back there drawing furiously. And the teacher comes along and says, "What are you drawing?" And she says, "God. I'm drawing a picture of God." And she says, "But nobody knows what God looks like." And the little girl, without batting an eye, says, "Well, they will in a minute."
Brilliant answer.
Yeah. So it's so strange because mundane jobs are going to be most likely going by the wayside. Anything a computer or a robot can do in the not too distant future is more and more going to be done by computers and robots, which means we're going to take the same workforce and be pushing them into the stuff that robots and AI and computers can't do as well. So how do we breathe life back into the creativity that children have and that they need? What the hell do we do here?
Even with the robots and the programming and the computers, there's got to be a visionary behind that. There's got to be somebody who's creative to have thought of that. All these apps and things like that. It took somebody to sit there in the bath or out in a field or something and go, or both. You know what? Yeah, maybe. And go, fantastic. This is a great idea. Let's go with this. And actually be able to get the funding and everything to be able to achieve that. It takes that. And, my husband said to me a couple of weeks ago, he said, "I'm a scientist." He said, "I'm not creative." And I was like, what?
Yes, you
but
are.
Scientists are creative by sheer nature. And, you should see him draw, and the things he comes out with is just beautiful. He's more creative than what I am in many different ways, just in a completely different way. And that's the thing. How do we get that installed? I think we have to go back to the very, very beginning. And I think we have to start educating people that this is important, give them options and give them support. And that's what Creative Owl's been doing, in that we have been helping parents, and we will be stepping that up in the next couple of months, just unendingly, where we want as many parents as we can to be able to have the resources. If they don't think they've maybe at the moment, with lockdown still in part over here, certainly, we still have children at home, and they've been at home since March, being homeschooled, which is very rare for us over here. People are just getting tired and fed up. and exhausted and lacking in inspiration and motivation to do pretty much anything at the moment
because of the lockdown and the way it sort of just weighs on your psyche.
Yeah. And look, there's a lot of parents out there, I give them complete credit, I'm one of them, who are trying to work as well as trying to homeschool their children. And you then try and add creativity into that. And after a few days of, why don't you go and draw a picture of this? Eventually the child comes up to you and says, what should I draw today, mummy? And you're like there going, oh, I'm just on the phone. What can I do? Not sure.
I know. Yeah.
So, there's a lot of people who are just, lacking in motivation at the moment and lacking ideas. And what we are there to do is to try and unlock that, try and, if you will, sort of take that pressure off the parents by giving them the inspiration and giving them the activities that they could do. Because I think a lot of people believe that creativity is all about drawing or writing. Certainly at school, it's all about drawing or writing. It's a case of, right, well, what else is there? My daughter the other day designed a new recipe. She decided that over here Subway was closed and she wanted a Subway sandwich. So she said, I'm going to go and make myself a Subway sandwich. And she's 8. And I sort of like went, whoa, hold on a minute. Let's just go together and have a look at this. And in the kitchen she went and she designed a Subway sandwich. And it was really, really immense. It was lovely. And that was just an 8-year-old who basically had sat there and gone, you know what, I can do something about this. So I'm just going to go and do it.
First of all, we'd better find out what Creative Owl is, because you've alluded to it twice, and I gather it's your work. And we don't know. I didn't come into this interview knowing what Creative Owl was, so why don't I give you a platform for a minute to tell us what the heck you're talking about?
Okay, so Creative Owl has just started. It's been around for about a month and will be getting bigger and bigger and bigger very soon. And what it is, it's a platform so that parents can, it's based on Facebook, your Creative Owl. And what it does, it allows parents inspiration. So there are games that you can play with the children on there. There are ideas on there. There's motivation. There's also a bit of the psychological stuff, although not based on psychology, as to why it is important. There is ideas, for example, through lockdown, there's been a lot of children getting very angry out there because they can't see their friends. They can't go out to the park. They can't do all the things that they are used to doing. And that's assuming they live in a house with a garden. If they live in a flat, there's a whole new things going on. So we had to think about this, and we were out in the field one day and I was like, oh, a dandelion. If you just hold a dandelion up and blow it, I was always taught that it was fairies. You release the fairies as you blow, which are the seeds, of course. Yeah. But what if that was all your worries? What was if that is all the things you're worried about in that particular head, and you can just blow them away and get away with them? So it's about inspiration. It's about taking sort of not everyday objects necessarily, but taking items and wondering what it is. A leaf, for example, is a leaf, or is it home to a creature? Could it be a scale off a dragon? Could it be, what else could it be? Could it be a boat for something going on when it's a rainy day? And it's there to inspire children. And it's also a platform where they can then go off and they can either ice a cake with something with dragon scales on it, or they can go off and they can make a song about it. They could make a dance about it. They could dress up like one if they wanted to. They could make a mask. They could go off and take that dragon and suddenly make this not just a dragon, but maybe they could make it into a dragon bird or, something else. They can literally take the ideas and the inspiration that we give to them and go and do something with it, and then come back, show us what they've made. They get all the encouragement that they could possibly imagine from my team, going in there and saying, that's awesome, that's amazing, wow, where could that dragon live? And then they could be like, oh, where could they live? Yes, let's have a think about this. So it's literally inspiring children again, getting to the grassroots, getting to the very, very basics.
Nice. Is it a web-based classroom? Is it a website? Is it in person?
At the moment,
I guess it can't be in person, right?
No, that's
Yeah.
right. It was going to be in person, and we were going to delve into creativity, and we were going to be going into schools, but that's on complete hold now. So we have gone, our first platform is Facebook. So we're on Facebook at Your Creative Owl. And from there, we have a group, we have a membership group on there as well, so that parents can go on there, become a member, and then get all this inspiration a couple of times a week. And very shortly, yes, the website will be up and running, and there will be various other things in there as well.
Excellent. Excellent. So it's all starting to make sense now why you wanted to be on the show. Okay, I get it.
This is something that I'm really passionate about. I'm really passionate about the fact that, there's a lot of people out there who are very, very clever, very, very intelligent people who don't get the fact that this is so important. If you take this away from a child, you lose an outlet for them. And I don't just mean an outlet for them spending some time. I mean an outlet for them emotionally, a bit of escapism, some fantasy. It's such an important tool that, especially at the moment in the situation that the world finds themselves in, is something that just must be there.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, obviously, completely. So I'm kind of wanting to look at the big picture and, how do we, the thing that I keep coming to in all these conversations, and I feel like in my heart, I know my answer, but is it even worth trying to, sort of, I guess, change the system from within? And I'm talking about the formalized public education system, because this is where, our kids spend more time in school typically than they do with us.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got the Creative Owl, and unless it becomes a mega corporation, it's only going to reach a very, very small population.
Mm-hmm.
We need something much bigger.
Yes.
Right. I mean, how do we do that?
I think we literally have to work from within the system and outside of the system. I think the more people that are aware of the fact, the more parents that are aware of the fact that this is being lost, because a lot of parents don't know what's going on in the school. A lot of parents haven't got the faintest idea what's going on at school. They wouldn't realize that, all these budget cuts are happening, that the children aren't getting this. And most parents out there understand the importance of it. So once we raise awareness to the fact that this is actually happening and the problems that it's causing because of that, then you've got the wheels of motion going on from them going to the school saying, well, we want this. Why are you cutting this? What is going on? And then you start raising the attention. And as soon as more and more schools are going, well, we're going to have to pay for this privately. Our school, to do anything like this, we've just had an adventure playground put in our school, but the parents have paid for it because there's no budget for it. And we live in a country, we have a country school, which is fantastic. So the parents have paid for that. And then it's the case of trying to convince the policymakers. And, that may be at local government level for here in the UK, where we have to be saying, look, actually, this needs to be changed. This is what we need to do. Look how well it's working. It's almost like we need to have a platform. We need to have a test, a demo there, and go, that's what that's achieving. That is how well it's working. Now roll that out. Now do it. It's there.
I guess I've lost faith in the system to be able to correct itself.
Yeah, I get that.
I think for me, that's what has happened. I don't think it. I know it. I'm pulling my punches here where I don't need to. And it's strange for me because, I was born and raised into what you would affectionately call a commune, and what was in fact a cult. And we were not raised to believe in the free market. We were not raised to believe in capitalism as the solution to any issues. And yet the only way I see with what I see around us that we can, the only way I see that we can change, the only instrument that I see that could potentially change education is the free market.
Yeah.
I don't see it happening at the level of the bureaucracies and the institutions that exist now. I mean, for God's sakes, the legislating doesn't even stop at the superintendent. It's got layers and layers and layers above that to it.
Yes.
And, the teachers who are boots on the ground are 5 layers away from the superintendent or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't know how many of the future of education roundtables you've watched, but my feeling is it has to be free market. It has to be driven by entrepreneurs, and business people mixed with educators.
Yeah. I mean, here we have a private school system and we have a state school system, and the private school system embraced this.
Yeah,
most private schools, of course, embrace creativity, embrace imagination into their lessons. They do music, art, sports, they do all of these things. But we simply do not have the funding at the moment in the state education system to be able to do this, or necessarily the will to do it.
Right.
So it's here already in part, and yet still we are there saying, or certain people in this country certainly are there saying, we need to get rid of the private schools. What? We almost need to bring the private schools into the state education system. They're doing something really well here. They're doing something right. And we need to sort of like take their model and hear their voices when they're saying, this is working well for our school. This is how it works.
Yeah.
These are the things that we get right. Yeah, we get some things wrong as well, but here are the things that are right. Now take that and put that in. And of course, we're going to get told here, oh, it's all about money.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up, because I feel like that collective consciousness level money narrative is so you see the looting and you see the riots and you see the protests and you see the injustice and I assume that most people, I shouldn't make this assumption. I can, and I know there's a number of people who can see the actual thing going on, and then I can see the way that the media and social media and outside forces foment that thing. Yeah. They come in and they make that thing bigger, worse, different, twisted. They spin it, they drive it. And so
fear-based marketing,
It's fear-based marketing, but I don't want to reduce it just to that. I want to talk at a more holistic level. Because what we're talking about is the money narrative. And I think but I do think the money narrative is a perpetuated narrative that creates fear-based marketing. I really do. I have yet to hear a rational argument for being in poverty. I've heard plenty of rational arguments about the damages of poverty.
Yes.
And about the people who are in poverty, who aren't getting out, can't get out, don't know how to get out, won't, whatever it is. But I think you tapped into something really important when we talk about any kind of sort of wide high level change. It's so easy now because we're generations into this idea of somehow money is bad. People with money are bad. All this irrational, and in fact, it's more than just irrational. It's a highly self-destructive belief.
Huge.
Right. And so I know that in the same way, I use Elon Musk and Tesla a lot for my example of what I want to do with Jackie, who I mentioned earlier, my other partner, Debbie, and the way he did Tesla.
Yes.
When he was starting Tesla, pundits and talking heads and auto manufacturers, everyone was against him. Everyone who had sort of the ability to sway public opinion, to push narratives, was against him. But he knew he was right.
Yes.
But not just knew he was right in some abstract way. He knew that if you can build something that proves in the market, right, that the old way is not the best way, and you can hit a critical mass, you can change people's opinions.
Yes.
And so this is what I think we need to do. And we will work against all of this money narrative stuff, right? And it breaks my heart because I know what you're talking about when you say there are going to be people who immediately equate the private school ideas with money that they don't have. And like when people self-select into that victim group.
Yes.
you know?
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I love what you're doing. And I guess all of that was sort of me building up to saying, if you want to do something at a big level, like we want to do, you're going to have to know that you're going to get, you're going to have to hit that critical mass, right? You're going to have to hit that tipping point. I don't think there's anyone who, well, I'm some, but mostly by and large, I don't think there's anyone who truly doesn't believe that creative outlets enrich their children. There's going to be some, but painting with the broad brush, there's always going to be a cruel bastard, right? Or or a ruthless, whatever, or a mean-spirited mother or something. We can't do away with that. But so, do you guys have a game plan for growth? Do you have a way that, at least a vision for how you take this, here's what I like. And it sounds like your Creative Owl project is just giving kids an outlet to just creativity and inspiration in a way, which I think is wonderful. Now, do you have an idea for how you can grow that?
We will be working with parents, and I think the word of the parents will get round. I think with more and more publicity that we can get behind this and the highlighting it, because like with everything, some things need to be highlighted for people to actually understand that there is a problem or there is a deficit in something. It's a bit like you were saying about the wealth creation model. At the end of the day, until people realize that is one of their ridiculous beliefs that just need to be cleared out and don't have value there anymore, then they're never going to be able to deal with it because they don't realize it. So it's about realization. So as soon as more people start realizing that this is the case, and more people come on board, and I'm working with a group of play therapists at the moment as well, who all believe in exactly this, and they believe in the power of play to be able to heal children through trauma and everything. Basically, you can heal a child with play through any situation whatsoever that they have dealt with in the past. How powerful is that? Through just play. And yes, they use amazing techniques, and they are trained, they are professional people. Some of them are psychologists themselves. And the power of that is just incredible. So why do we not have that in our schools? Why do schools have to pay for that privately for these people to be able to come in? Why is their value not known? There are so many amazing services out there that people just do not know exist. I didn't know that existed up until about 6 months ago. So I found them, and working with them to be able to get that message out there, and that's really important. So it's joining forces with like-minded people as well to get that wheel of momentum going. And as soon as you start getting that wheel of momentum going, unless one great big huge catastrophe comes along, it's very hard to stop that.
I agree.
And why would you want to stop that? So, at the end of the day, if you put a great big huge post out to the nationality and you said, right, who's up for creativity in children? Who's up for inspiration? Who thinks it's good? Who thinks it's bad? Mass poll. The amount of people who would believe that actually it's good, even if they didn't do it with their children, would massively outweigh those that didn't. Because as you said, most people understand the basics that it's important.
Yeah.
So now all we need to do, we know we've got that belief. Now we need to just take that, gain the momentum, get it going, get it seen, get it out there, and get something huge built off the back of it. Even if it is a massive independent school that has all of this, even if it's changing school structure so that they bring in more creative lessons, you're not actually then changing and putting in a new lesson into the lesson plan. You're just doing lessons differently.
Yeah. Well, I'm all for changing the whole school model, the whole school structure. I have, and so when you say that, you get me on board. Tell us the one best place for people to go to learn more about your project.
Is Facebook, and we are at Your Creative Owl on Facebook. That's the best place for us at the moment.
On Facebook. Perfect.
Your Creative Owl on Facebook.
Perfect. Very good. I want to thank you so much for being patient, because it took a long time to get in.
That's fine.
And it was so exciting to learn what you're up to. I love it. I have an introduction to make for you, just based on an intuition that it might be a good one, which I will make after we hang up. So thank you so much for your time, Zoe.
Thank you. And I love your project as well.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.